Morgan Hobbs, and welcome to Gross McCleaf Gallery on the Go. A couple weeks ago, we went to the Philadelphia Museum of Art with our artist Kurt Moyer to discuss his practice in relationship to some of his favorite artists from art history. It was a great conversation, and I know you're really going to enjoy it, so let's go!
So this is the hall I come in pretty much every time I come to the museum and stop and see this Corot.
Yes.
And then work my way down, but this is, I can't do it with my glasses on. These are just, this sort of color from nature has been like a base for me. You know what I mean? This was the model that I learned from to start painting outdoors.
What do you mean by this kind of color?
Well, this kind of delicate scene color that comes from standing there and from observation. Obviously, not all of this is from observation. These figures are sort of added in later. But if you look at what's happening in this landscape, this is somebody studying very closely and copying and responding to what they're seeing in nature. Like this, that gorgeous little shadow right there on the hill, and then how it comes into the sunlight there. He was just a master at this.
Yeah. No, the subtlety is really great.
Sometimes you'll see too, there's in Corot, there's often a cloud above that corresponds with what's happening in the landscape. This one not so much, but there's a beautiful Corot that was owned by Degas actually that there's like 4 layers of space, and the back layer of space has a cloud that corresponds with it, and then as you come forward, there's another cloud that corresponds, come forward, another cloud. It's a beautiful setup.
Was he doing that to delineate the space?
Yeah, for sure.
Do you feel that you learn more from paintings or from nature? I mean, because some people might paint differently from nature, right? Or
Right.
do you feel like that this is the accurate depiction?
I think everyone who's making a painting in nature, and in particular that experience is, most people talk about how they feel like they start seeing more by making the painting. And so when you're out there and you're studying and you're trying to see these subtle color changes, your eyes actually, you have that impression, that experience of almost like your eyes are opening up, like you're seeing more color than you saw there before. And so I think that real direct relationship and that real direct experience is where a lot of the learning comes from. And somehow through that process, I think you internalize those colors,
right,
you know?
right.
And so after 20 some years of doing that, I feel like I can recall the colors from experiences that I had way more than I could never tell you what year it was or anything like that, but I could tell you a lot. I could recreate a lot of those colors on my palette.
Right,
you know.
Right. So then, when you look at a painter like Corot and you see the colors back here, you're like, oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, I've had that
understand.
experience.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think a lot of seeing paintings is the idea that I've had a shared experience with this same person. That he had this experience in 1855, and I have felt the same thing. You know, it's kind of like a poem that makes you remember the way you felt about something. That's exactly it. That's what's wonderful about it.
Totally.
So anyway, I always look at these first. So with the same experience of that, Corot was studying nature and performing this painting. Cézanne, I think, is taking those same perceptual experiences and really kind of being aware of the phenomena of seeing, in a way that I think when you look at the real naturalistic stuff like Corot and the Barbizon school painters and before them, they had this desire to make a naturalistic looking image, you know? And I think one of the things that I really value about Cezanne is that he took the experience of making a painting by looking, and allowed those almost like the quirks of the way we see to bloom in his paintings, right? So Cezanne's always about lots of things at once. Like when I look at Cezanne, I think about him thinking about very small things, and how his painting is fitting into this broader idea of art, and all of his kind of emotional input. Everything I think has the option to be in these paintings, right? Sometimes Cezanne, I think, is when I say very small things, I think sometimes he's letting just this stereoscopic idea of vision play, right? So he's looking at these still lifes, looking at these landscapes, and doing this, like closing one, you know, like looking at it from those two different perspectives of his two different eyes, you know? And
I always feel like too, from his drawings and like quote unquote unfinished works or like less resolved works, that he is looking at where two shapes meet a lot, and then filling in the rest to like integrate the thing into a picture. Like it's like he's like, oh, here is that, and there's that, and there's that.
Well, that's what I mean about how there's always more than just kind of one thing going on in these paintings, right? Like if you look at where the glass and the plate come together, there's a point where the glass hits the plate and the glass is sort of to the right, and then there's a plate where the plate hits the glass and the plate is a little to the left. Like they can't possibly both be in those places at the same time, but they are. That's the way we look at it. This is his right eye seeing this part, and his left eye seeing that part, and then so he's got this situation where just about everybody else is going to draw a line, and that line is going to delineate the shape, and that's a very conceptual thing. We've just chosen a path for the edge of that plate to be in, but that's not at all the way he sees the edge of the plate. You know, and so he's painting those two things. Okay, so that's one. That's like enough, right? That's huge. But through that process, he's getting these little marks, right? And then, like second and related thing is those little marks next to each other shimmer, you know, and so you'll get very active little tip, and it makes. It makes that this little visual phenomenon happening on the surface of the canvas too, you know. So there's never just one thing happening. It makes them really exciting. And then when you incorporate the bathers, there's you get all this Freudian stuff, you get all of this desire, you get this kind of repressed eroticism, you get the full connection to all of art history. Like, you know, Cezanne was really famous for saying how he wanted to redo Poussin after nature, and it's like that makes sense when you think about things like this, the glass, how Poussin had really kind of almost like conceptualized and idealized the landscape, whereas. So that's being that's like nature out of your head, you know, versus from nature is the viewing being the most important part of it.
Right, definitely. So, the experience of sight.
Particularly the Mount Saint Victoire paintings, I think he had this motif that he could go back to again and again and again, and it provided him with everything he needed in order to explore these things in his paintings.
Right.
Like I think this is one of the greatest clouds ever painted. Those color combinations and the way they float right there. Like I would love to have part of my painting look just like that, you know. So again, just like with the still lifes, he's doing multiple things all at once. He's a really complex person, right?
Right.
He's not just, he doesn't have a preconceived notion of what this is going to look like. And so that's why he can keep going back to the same subjects again and again, because it's always going to be new. And it's always, you're never like painting it and then you're done.
Right.
You know, you're using the place to provide you with information, really, but also to sort of be in to make the painting.
Right. Were you saying that you feel like that he focuses on one area in the painting and then paints in the periphery?
There are some of these where if you stand, you know, I think it's always important to look at a painting from the distance it would take to paint it, you know. So this is about right. It should be like lower, but if you look at some of these, and this is my theory, I didn't read it, you know what I mean? So this could be completely wrong,
Right.
but it works. If you look right here and you look sort of to the center of this painting, it kind of moves up and down, but the rest of this makes so much sense as peripheral vision.
I'll tell you what I've always thought is that he has like a handful. Sorry, we're too close. Okay.
It was too close. I'm sorry.
I feel like that there are like a few points in each painting that he focused on, and
Yeah.
that's why there's discrepancies within like, okay, this seems like that this piece all fits together and this piece all fits together and this makes sense together, but then there's some like, you know, integration of those shapes like in the middle that is sort of like, you know, wonky or whatever.
Well, just like the still life, you know, that when he paints, the things are on the back of the table. You know, he's not trying to make them fit into this traditional perspective thing, right? So he's letting that come up, right? Because it's very much like the way that we see things. So when you're in a landscape, if you're looking at the mountain, right, he's allowing that to sort of move forward. He's not forcing this traditional like perspective to make that mountain sit back where it's supposed to sit.
Right.
I've never been here, but I've seen enough mountains to know that there would be a lot more atmospheric perspective happening in the way that these. The way that these fields are lined up would change a lot more than that. But what happens when you look around a room or a landscape or anything, our eyes are constantly, you know, our little apertures are refocusing on, you know, that color, and we're making sense out of this thing. But it does change. If you look over here, but pay attention to a color that's in your peripheral vision, it's a way of seeing it, and it's kind of more pure sense. Anyway, again, it's not one thing. There's like 1,000 different things going on in these paintings all the time. These paintings, I grew up going to the Barnes Foundation. That was like our high school art club would go on trips and things like that. And so from a kind of young age, like I saw, you know, still life paintings, landscape paintings, portrait paintings, and bather paintings, as if they were all sort of like regular subjects. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's really unique to Philadelphia. Like because of the Barnes collection and because of of this Philadelphia Museum collection, there's so many bathers. You know, and that. I almost backed into it to a point where I started having to explain what I was doing because they weren't. I thought they were just part of everyone's. Everyone, you could just make bather paintings, you know.
Right.
Because the subject has this, to me, this kind of idyllic, perfect, sensual, like human nature interaction, right? And I think from looking at Cézanne paintings, I never thought of the people in the paintings as having personalities outside of this picture, right? When you look at a Renoir or any of these other artists, you know that that's a person that was either modeling for this or is a partner of some sort or whoever.
Their face is defined, like they're a person with a character.
Right.
Yeah.
I think these figures come from a place that's much deeper inside Cezanne, right? They probably represent things that are, like that are very personal to him, but also things that maybe he wants to. He would want for himself, but he can't. He was notorious for being a bit of a hermit, not wanting people to touch him, and not having models, and all that kind of stuff. But still, this was an important subject for him. So he's taking a lot of the same things that came out of that landscape in still life painting, this small shimmering mark, this naturalistic color. And he's applying it to this subject to make something that is very Arcadian in its theme, And one of the quotes that I love from Cezanne is he said he wanted to make a painting that felt Arcadian, but was not a picture of Arcadia. So I took that was so important to me at the time where. It was like, this isn't a picture of something, right? This isn't like Cezanne and his friends, right? It's a subject that feels Arcadian or feels
the Garden of Eden,
a particular way. Yeah. But it's not meant to be read literally either, And so, I'm interested. I've been reading a little bit about him, and people have all these sort of Freudian, like, oh, this was like a repressed homosexuality or a repressed feelings about women or there's always repressed something. And it's like, that may be, and that's interesting, but I don't think that it really gives us a better way of seeing the painting.
Right.
You know what I mean?
For sure,
I think the painting exists as a work of art that's a gift to us that we get to bring our own life experiences to this,
Just like any work of art, I am actually interested in that, like, when does it become just a part of, like, the culture, like, that this artwork, like, death of the author or whatever, like, it moves outside of the artist's intentions to be this sort of, not like a clean slate, but this like other point to bounce yourself off of in your own.
And sometimes you can't separate it. Like when Picasso was awful to this woman, and here's this picture of her. In his view, she's dreaming blissful dreams, but it's like sometimes you can't separate that kind of histories.
Right.
But I think with Cezanne, you really can.
Right.
We know like next to nothing about like what he was thinking about or who he thought these people were.
Right.
Like they keep going. Historians always go back to like his early years with some of his other artist friends, and that they actually used to go swimming in these mountain streams or something. And sure, like those experiences can stay with somebody for their whole life, and can be the sort of source that he goes back to. But just like with the still lifes being about 1,000 different things, I think these are about 1,000 different things.
I think it's interesting to hear you talk about possible like content, and I know that that's like where a lot of art writing ends up going, is like, what does this mean? What is this about? And like, I guess I never really, like, Cezanne was such an experimental formalist that like, I wonder sometimes too, like, of course, once you put a human subject in there, you want to create a narrative or some sort of story around what's happening. But do you feel compelled to do that about every single one of his works, like the still lives and the like, forest scenes, or is it like, suddenly we have something going on here that needs to be interpreted?
I do not create storylines ever with Cezanne. when I see a Bonnard painting or something like that, there's like a little story that comes into this. There's his wife, and she got up and she's giving the cat milk at night. You know what I mean? There's this cute little story that goes with it, and he's made something wonderful out of it. This is not that. These figures, I don't think to him exist outside of here. I don't think that I really don't think, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't really, these aren't like lustful figures, you know what I mean? You can look over here at this Malloy sculpture or the Rodin, it's like, you can see someone like there's some lusty energy in these things, right?
Right.
This is not what that's about.
No.
And there's the subject itself, like the mountain, is so rich. It's like a deep well that he can keep working back into, keep working from. And I certainly don't think that Cézanne worked from a place of understanding. I think he worked from a place of like serious doubts and serious like kind of confusion and a willingness to let just like in the still lifes where it was maybe as simple as letting one eye go, or like seeing it from two different perspectives. I think he was grateful for the opportunities to make a change and to leave the change and have that be painting. Right? And so you get, in some ways, the Cézannes are least interesting when like this figure is almost anatomically looks correct, right? The ones I think that get really interesting are the ones that are they're morphing a little bit. They're becoming something other than what they were maybe originally intended. You get sections where like a whole face is going away, or it's melding, or it's becoming this sort of body next to it. And I think that's.
I always like this part here where it's like, is this the shoulders of this person, or is that the butt of the person?
Exactly. And so it's really like somewhere in between, right? And it functions kind of as both at a glance. Like a lot of people are going to walk past this and they're just going to like not really try to dissect it, right? But I think for Cézanne, he's maybe, I mean, I'm not an art historian, but maybe he's one of the first people to really find the value in keeping these changes, and seeing them as being as being fodder for art.
Yeah. No, another thing, I mean, you kind of touched on it when you were talking about like the, lust that we can see in other images in this gallery, but like, the interplay between beauty and idealism, and then almost something that has like morphed into, maybe not quite horrific, but like not as a beautiful depiction of the human form or whatever. Like you're seeing these sort of gargantuan.
One of the things that's great about the Barnes, the large bather at the Barnes, is that he took it further and further and further. Like I think this was the last one of the three. The one that there's London, the Barnes, and this one, and the one in the Barnes in particular, it's thick. It's gone through so much painting it's almost on like a endless search for where it's supposed to be. I think that there's again why I think this painting is very difficult to talk about. Cézanne's very difficult to talk about because there's always more than one thing happening. And they can be quite mysterious, and I love that about them. And so there's always a point where I get to like I'm like describing and I'm saying what I think, and then I really hear this little voice just saying, you just have to shut up and just look at the painting. You feel where it is, because I think that there's like when I'm making a painting, I'm pretty sure like Cézanne had the same thing where you put a mark down and it feels right or it feels wrong, right? And and that's enough. You can work forever just being responsive to that. Does this feel right? Does that feel wrong? Because you don't need to explain why all the time, right? And so like I think even viewing a painting, it's like, how does it, how does that feel?
Right,
you know?
right.
Monet had cataract surgery, and during those times, I don't know if you've ever tried to, like, you ever get your eyes dilated, and then go try to like really look at something. All the colors are sort of messed up. Well, I think if you look at some of his other Japanese bridge paintings in there, a lot of these colors exist in nature, right? But his vision at the time was warmer, more blurry, all those kind of things. But he just like Cézanne's kind of looking and thinking about like the stereoscope vision that we have and everything. Monet's responding to what he really sees, and so it's not about his knowledge of how the bridge is constructed or something. It's really 100% about, oh, I see this warmth in here, and I see this kind of quality of light and this cool green that's on top of it. And so and as soon as you're making that relationship between what you see and bringing that painting, that paint onto the canvas, you're creating a new relationship, right? So Cézanne or Monet never really made abstract paintings, but they are as abstract as anything else. It just didn't he didn't have the art historian on his shoulder telling him what he was doing, But if you look at sections like this up in here, and it's just gorgeous, It's just like, this is like Joan Mitchell, right? And,
oh my God, yeah. This has to be like one of my favorites actually of Monet's. Like just these little hits of purple are just like so good.
It's
this
gorgeous,
little
right?
spot on here, I just love it so much. But I am like, when you're talking, like continually reminded that, even starting with the Corot, you were like, oh, this is a response to seeing nature.
Yes.
And then that continually comes up, even though the style and the sort of painted framework has changed so significantly.
Yeah, and it's so that core experience is, it's how we all do things, right? You have this experience of looking or feeling, or things are happening, and how you're responding to it is what's creating this artwork out of it. I think that there are very few painters who kind of isolate themselves in the studio and say like paintings are only about this. Like I find a lot of that to be a little cold, because there's so much more meaning that's associated with when it's associated with the experience of looking. There's this extra layer of meaning, and so even though it's pretty much impossible to make any sense out of like the forms that are happening up here, you still know that the work came from that experience, right? And we also have had that experience. So it's like this is what he's given us is sort of the essence of that experience, and we also kind of know that essence of experience. So that we're together with him.
Right. I was gonna actually mention too. I started thinking about like how you seem to be like rigorously investigating ways to use painted form in ways that I don't think a lot of contemporary artists are doing as much now. Like it seems like more of like a.
Well, I found there was a something happened, and all these things sound like very small things, but to me they were massive. So one of the things that happened when I left that naturalistic form behind is I knew I had the source, I know kind of where I've always gone to for these paintings is that like natural experience, right? That's the rich well that I go to, and when I started making paintings that took the naturalistic form out, you know, and I was just making paintings about the color, right? You're immediately forced to start thinking about, well, now what form is it going to take? Because there's almost no such thing as a formless painting, right? It's like, so you have to make these decisions based on something other than like the position of the tree, you know, where it's like, okay, well, the tree's here, and I can like take these colors, but as soon as you take a color off of its kind of placement and relationship, you know, you're really changing its meaning. You know, if you have, you know, we'll make it really simple, you know, blue sky and green grass. You know, if you take the green grass and you stick it up here, you're altering its meaning, right? But so it's forced me to really think about how other artists solve this problem, you know. And so you get a lot of people who put things like Paul Klee and the Delaunay's like on almost like a grid, almost like a grid form.
Right.
But there's so many other options, right? There's much more sort of organic forms. There's geometric forms. You look at like what Richard Diebenkorn did with the Ocean Park paintings. Is he's taking that color, and he's applying. He's using it and using these geometric forms to create something new. You know, that they're not necessarily, he's not drawing the landscape really anymore. He's making this new thing out of it.
Right,
and that's really important to me, but I'm finding if I stay kind of close to the cusp between kind of naturalistic representation and abstraction, I can keep some of the meaning. Like so much of the meaning of the colors that you see in nature comes from their relationship to each other and their placement in relationship to each other, right? And so I'm finding I can keep a lot of that placement and not let it tip over into a naturalistic representation.
Right,
Does that make sense?
right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Like when you look at a lot of abstraction, you know, there's not the same sensitivity to natural color. You know, you look at that Corot and how many kind of perfectly toned colors he has sitting on that bank, in that kind of middle ground distance, all those purples and grays and greens, and everything is really geared to sitting in that particular space. And I mean, even in this painting, this is the season we're in now, right? We have all these little spots of color floating in those kind of gray, greens, and I think that there's this opportunity there to use that without painting this scene. You know, I think I don't really know how. There's got to be a way of making this. I keep thinking about it as a third thing, right? It's like first thing is the landscape. Second thing is this painting that depicts the landscape. But there's got to be like this third thing that's like this abstract form. I keep saying abstract, but it's not really the right word. But this you know, this kind of physical art object,
right.
that can be autonomous. It's a thing in itself first, but it can refer to the real, you know, the real feeling at the same time.
Yeah.
So when I'm mixing colors, right, and I'm sure Monet would have been able to do this too. But like, look at all the color in that path, right? That. Seeing that is the experience of being there, right? And so when I'm mixing colors, I'm thinking about what they're representing out in the world, right? So I'm mixing that particular blue, and it's either, it's that deep space. I'm mixing this particular purple, and it may be similar, but it's the path, and then it's that color as it moves into the shadow. So like for years, I've been looking for something that I can frame, that I can find a spot in the landscape, and I can paint what I see in that framed spot, and what I was getting, it was like a naturalistic depiction of what that looked like, right? The past few years, I've been really focusing on trying to make something that's autonomous, something that's new out of that experience. That's not a that feels like it. It's kind of like how Cézanne's bathers felt Arcadian, but there weren't a picture of Arcadia. The idea is that you can make something that is in response to that experience, but not a picture of it. And so I think that's what